Hello and welcome to this Workbooks End User Training tutorial. In this session we're going to be looking at working with activities in the system. When we're talking about activities, we're talking about things that are used in workbooks to help you keep track of the interactions you've had or need to have with the people and leads on your database. Activities include tasks such as phone calls, to-dos and meetings. This tutorial will guide you through how to create activities and make sure that they're linked to the relevant records to make sure that you can keep on top of the actions that you need to take. Like other record types, there's a landing page for activities which you'll find here. On this particular landing page, the activities have been grouped together by their due date. This top one doesn't have a due date, and anything else that doesn't have anything populated there would always appear at the top of your list. You'll also see that there are a lot of red rows. This indicates that the activity was due before today, but the status hasn't been changed to complete. The activity hasn't been carried out. I'm going to open up this activity here, Call to Arrange Time to Demo. You can see from the type that this is a phone call, and as with other record types, mandatory fields like the subject, assigned to, type, status, priority, they are indicated by the solid blue line on the left-hand side. There are quite a few required fields on an activity, but as you'll see when we get to the point of creating a new one, most of the fields are auto-populated for you, so it doesn't really take very long to set one up. You can see that there is a due date. It's not mandatory, but you should fill it in really. And there's also a status. This one is showing new, but if I look at the drop down, there are other options. On the right hand side, there is this section for primary contact details. And as you can see, it's someone called John Simpson from Westland Limited that we're due to call. These greyed out fields for telephone, mobile and email, they've just been populated from his record, his person record, as has the employer field. If you look in the description field, you can see that another activity was completed a few days ago and some information about that previous activity has been added. I'm going to go up to the Related Items tab at the top here. You can see there's a 6 in brackets. When I open this up, it shows that this particular activity has been linked to the original sales lead for John. It's also been linked to that previous task. We saw in the description that a task had already been completed, and this is the particular task that it's linked to. It's linked to an opportunity. It's also linked to John's person record and his employer, Westland Limited. And finally, it's also linked to a customer quotation. Don't worry about making these links, the system will do that automatically for you, but the point that I wanted to highlight really is that activities can be linked to the relevant records in workbooks, and that can be multiple records as you can see, and it makes it much easier for you to follow up on actions regardless of whether you work in sales or finance or marketing operations. It doesn't matter. The records that you work with, you can link activities to them. In the tutorial about adding organisations and people, we created an organisation record for Atom Enterprises and a person record for Alison Jones. At the time we said that we'd met Alice at the London Trade Show and that she was very interested in our products and services. So let's imagine now that we want to create a phone call task to remind us to call Alice next week. There are several ways that you can start creating a task. You could, for example, here I am on the landing page for activities. I could just click on New Task. I could go to the Start button and click on New and Task from here and choose the appropriate type. But where possible, we'd recommend starting from the record for the person or lead that the call or meeting or whatever the activity is related to, which in our case is Alice Jones. So we can search for Alice, or if we've had the record open recently, we can look in recent items. Let's see if we can see Alice in recent items. Not easily, so I'm going to search for her. And there she is. From here, you can simply use the New button, the blue button at the top here, and choose Phone Call, or whatever the activity is that you want to add to the system. I mentioned before that there are quite a few mandatory fields, required fields on an activity record, but you can see that all but one have already been populated for you. It doesn't mean to say you can't change these other values, but they are already there. So you do have to put in a subject, and when you want to carry this activity out. So I'll just pick a week from today, and down in the description you can add some notes to remind you when the due date comes round what it was that you wanted to do. At this point you don't have to, but you might want to use a little shortcut, which is holding down Alt, Shift and 0 at the same time. Doing that automatically puts into these square brackets and in italics the name of the user who's just done that. So I'm logged in as someone called Workbooks Solutions Admin, and the date and time that I did that. And then you can add your notes afterwards. Not mandatory, but it does just help. Sometimes if activities are being undertaken by lots of different people in your organisation, it can sometimes help just to see who made the notes. If you look at the Related Items tab now, you can see there's a number 2 in brackets, and if I open that up, this activity is automatically linked to both the person record for Alice and also her employer, Atom Enterprises. And as a user, I didn't have to do anything to make that happen other than start with Alice's person record, which means that over on the right hand side here in the primary contact details, Alice's information is pulled through, and that's what's making the join for you, but you don't have to do that. Remember, if it's more appropriate for a colleague to make this call, you can assign the record to another user on your system. If you do that, they should receive a notification as long as they haven't switched their notifications off, and they would then see this activity in their My Open Activities view on the landing page. So once you've got enough information in here, you can save and close this record. I'm just going to clear everything down to make it easier to see what's going on the screen. What I would recommend, if you haven't already, I'm going to go back and reopen my activities landing page. If you haven't, I would recommend that you invest a few minutes making sure that you're happy with the layout of your Open Activities view. You can switch on other columns and so on, and there's a tutorial on how to do that, so I'm not going to cover it today. But do that and pin, using the push pin up at the top here, pin this view to your desktop so that every time you log in, you can see the activities that you need to carry out. There are other ways where you might be able to find your activities. You may be using a report on a dashboard for that, but if not, I would certainly make this screen appear when you first log in. Imagine now that it's the 31st of March and you've opened up Workbooks and you can see that you should call Alice today. So open up the record simply by clicking on it, ready to make the call. You can see your previous notes to give you a reminder of what it is you need to call Alice about. And if you've linked your Workbook system to a VoIP system, all you need to do is choose the telephone number you want to call and click to call the number. So imagine you've had the call, and during it Alice has explained that she'd like a demo of your product, but she wants to check with a colleague about the best date for that, so she's asked you to call back tomorrow. You could just move the due date over here on the left hand side and change the date of it, but if you do that, any reports that track how many calls you make would be incorrect. It would show just 1 call instead of 2. The best practice thing to do is to add some notes to the description field. Now mine's going to come up with the same date here because I'm doing this all on the same day, but imagine that that date was the 31st of March and you put in some notes. Once you're happy with that, then instead of changing the due date, what you can do is use the blue button at the top that says complete, this one here. You can just complete and close this activity, and that means there won't be another one due in the future for you to take action on. What we'd recommend is that you use one of the complete and follow on options, complete and follow on meeting if you've actually set up a date for the demo, complete and follow on task if there's something that you need to do, or in our case, a complete and follow on phone call to give Alice another call tomorrow, which in this imaginary scenario would be the 1st of April. I'm going to click on that in a moment. When I do, what will actually happen? The record that you see on the screen at the moment will be marked as complete. The status will change from new to complete, and the completed date will populate with today's date. At the same time, in effect, a copy will be taken of this activity, pulling through any information that's in the description field and opening up on your screen, ready for you to say when you want to carry out that follow-on activity. Here's what I mean. I'll click on this now. So this looks very much like the record that was just on the screen. It's got the same subject, but you might want to modify that. So I'll arrange a demo. There's no due date because Workbooks can't guess when you need to do it. Remember, we're imagining that the previous activity was on the 31st of March and we've been asked to call again tomorrow, so I'll set that for the 1st of April. If you look down in the description, everything that I'd put in before doing complete and follow on with the previous activity is still there. And Workbooks actually adds its own date time stamp here saying that the previous activity was completed. It does say today because really it is the 24th of March, but hopefully you get the idea. In addition, if you look up at the Related Items tab now, on the previous activity there were two related items. There was Alice's person record and the employer, the organisation record for Atom Enterprises. But now it says Related Items 3, and if I go up there, it's because this is also now linked to the previous task. So once you're happy with that particular activity, you can save and close, and then when you come into the office on the 1st of April, you'll see that this particular phone call is due on that date. So now that we've done that, if I scroll down in my open activities, you'll see that on the 1st of April there are various things I need to do, but this top one here is the one that I just created, call to arrange a demo, and you can see over on the right that that's with Alison Jones. Just to show you, if I open Alice's record, which I can do from here, I can either open the task itself or open Alice's contact record, person record. So I'll open up Alice, and if you look at the Activities tab for Alice, which is the third one in, this one, it shows the number 2 in brackets. I'll open that up. Here's both of those activities. Here's the original one to follow up on a meeting at the London Trade Show, and it's got a status of complete, and the one above it is the one that I've just created by using the complete and follow on functionality, which is due on the 1st of April, and it's new. Not only do the records show there, I'm going to go to the main tab for Alice and open up from here Atom Enterprises, maximize that out. Both of those activities are showing on the Activities tab for the organisation record as well. And if there were lots of activities for different employees at Atom Enterprises, they would all have rolled up and all be visible on the Activities tab at the organisation level, which gives you a kind of helicopter view of what's going on across that organisation. I mentioned earlier that there are several ways that you can create an activity, and that best practice where possible is to start with the person or the lead record. Sometimes though it makes sense to start elsewhere. For example, on an opportunity record, like the one that's on the screen at the moment. On an opportunity, you can use the New button here to create your activity. So I'll choose Phone Call. You'll see on the Related Items tab, it's related to one thing. If I open up that tab, it's related to the opportunity because that's where I started. I do have to relate it to a person, so I'm searching for John Simpson, and that pulls through his details. You also have to give it a subject because that's a mandatory field. If you notice in the middle of the screen there's a little checkbox here that's automatically ticked called Link to Customer. This only appears if you create an activity against an opportunity record, and what it means is that if I'd selected a primary contact over on the right who worked for a different organisation from the customer one, maybe a primary contact who's advising on the opportunity or a contractor, that sort of thing, the activity itself would still be linked to the customer organisation record as long as this box is checked. There's really very few occasions where you might want to take that tick out of the box, so my recommendation would be just to leave it, put in your due date, and save and close the record. When I do that, this activity will be linked to John Simpson, it'll be linked to his employer Westland, and it will also be linked to the opportunity as we just saw. If you're working with a case record, like the one that's on the screen at the moment, you'll see that they have, in a similar way to the activities, some primary contact fields. Here, if you use the New button to create your phone call, or let's try a meeting this time round, the activity that's created will automatically assume that the primary contact on the case is also the primary contact for the activity. Now, I haven't shown you a meeting record before, but it's very similar to the phone call ones. The subject field is mandatory, and you've got start and end dates, just like you would in Outlook, for example, if you were creating a meeting there. Down here we've got required and optional fields. Whoever you put in here, so let me maybe select John Simpson, who we've already seen on this tutorial. You can see the difference here. Gracie has got a star next to her name and John hasn't. What happens is that the first person that you add to your meeting record, whether it's in the required field or the optional field, will be treated as the primary contact, and you'll be able to identify them because of the little asterisk, the star next to their name. If I wanted this meeting to actually have John as the primary contact, I just clicked on a little down arrow next to him and I can just select, and you can see that the star, if you like, moves over to John's record. You can only have one person who's the primary contact, but of course you can invite multiple people to a meeting activity. There are other records in workbooks, such as marketing campaigns. An example of one is on the screen at the moment, and also products that don't have that new button across the top here that we've seen on pretty much every other record we've looked at. If you wanted to create an activity linked to a record that doesn't have that new button, then go to the Activities tab, and here you've got two buttons. You can either schedule an activity, which means to create something that is due in the future, or record an activity. And if I was to record a task, for example, you can see that the due date and completed date are already populated and the status is complete because Workbooks assumes that you've already done this thing. But of course there isn't a primary contact, so we'd have to choose that one and put in the subject, whatever it might be. And notice that on the Related Items tab, this activity is automatically linked to the marketing campaign. So even if there isn't a new button, the records do still get linked together. So overall, remember that regardless of where you create the activity, whether it's against, in this instance, a marketing campaign, or it's on a case, or an opportunity, or any other kind of record directly on a person record, the totality of your open activities will appear on your activities landing page. So to iterate my advice earlier would be to pin this to your desktop so that it opens up as soon as you log in. Thank you for watching this tutorial, which I hope you found useful. For more information, remember to visit our knowledge base, which you can find at www.workbooks.com/knowledge_base. Thanks, bye bye.